As we are now joined by former Royals manager Ned Yost. Ned, how are you on this wonderful Monday morning, my man?
Doing great. How about you guys?
I'm doing pretty well, and I promise I'm not going to hang up on you this time. I've made that clear with Bob. He said if you do it, Ned will come and eject your ass out of the studio.
Yeah. I'll come find you when we come to do John Walton's Hall of Fame induction.
That's exactly right.
I'm literally shaking hearing you say I'll come find you, Ned.
What's the biggest thing you took away from Bobby Cox, Ned? I know he was a huge mentor for you.
Well, I mean, it was everything. It wasn't no one biggest thing. It was a complete education on how to manage a Major League Baseball team. I was with Bobby for 12 years. The first 8 years, I was the bullpen coach. When I first got this job, I was smart enough to tell myself that I better watch everything this man does, ask questions, and pay attention. So for me going into it as a bullpen coach, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go down the bullpen. I'm going to be 300 feet away from the game down there with a bunch of relievers. But the thing that it did was I had the ability to catch every side session that Greg Maddux, Don Smoltz, Tommy Glavine, and all the rest of the Braves pitchers threw every day. I had the ability to work with Leo Mazzoni, the pitching coach down there every day. So over the course of 8 years, I learned pitching mechanics. I learned pitching theory. I learned what goes through Hall of Fame pitchers' minds when they're pitching, what's important to them. It was an 8-year course down there on pitching, which was phenomenal. After the 8 years, Bobby moved me to third base coach. And for the next 4 years, I sat next to Bobby and learned how to manage a game, how to run a game, offensively on that part. It got to the point where we were like so in sync that I knew what he was going to do in the moment he was going to do it. So it was a tremendous education, but more than anything else, I think I learned watching Bobby how he treated people, how he treated the press, how he treated the grounds crew, how he treated the parking attendants, how he treated the people that were working in the tunnel cleaning it up. And I would walk in with Bobby at times, and he would say hello to everybody, knew their names, and when he walked by, he made them feel like $1 million. And it wasn't one day on a good day. It was every day. Doesn't matter if it was a good day or a bad day. He treated people the same every single day, and that was with respect and made him feel like $1 million. And he was just an incredibly humble person. So he was a Hall of Fame caliber manager that had all these wonderful attributes. And, you know, we were talking the other day, I was talking with Brian Snicker, Walt Weiss, Freddie Gonzalez, and, you know, we were all talking about that. We'd found out early that morning that Bobby had passed. We had just gone to see him about 10 days ago, and you could tell that he was starting to go downhill a little bit, and he just wasn't feeling good. And, we were talking about to each other all the attributes that he brought to all of us. We all became successful managers at one point, and Flint and I both won World Series, and Walt's doing great with Atlanta, and Freddie had done well. And, we were talking about what we have in common. And I said, I think what we have in common is that the old saying says that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and we're all apples from the Bobby Cox tree. And that's why we feel so close to each other, but I think that's why we've all been so successful, because we've learned from the best. Somebody said one time, if you want to be the best, watch the best and do everything the best does. And that always made sense to me. The problem was Bobby was just so much smarter than all of us, but you could still try to grab some of those traits to become successful in the way you treat your players, the way that you, run a game, the way you handle a pitching staff. He taught us quite a bit. Just about everything that, I think I can be attributed from Bobby.
Talking to Ned Yost, former Royals manager and World Series winning manager for the Kansas City Royals. I want to ask you, Ned, because I don't have the luxury of sitting back and hearing what Bobby would have taught me if I was in your shoes. I just have college professors, which I kind of think of it as kind of the same way. And there's times in my life and the profession I've gotten into, I'm like, all right, what do we do and how do we learn how to do this in college? Was there something during the 2014 or even the 2015 World Series where you were on that bench and kind of like before the game and have like that moment where you're like, what would Bobby do here?
No, I wouldn't. Because I was and let me tell you why.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I was on the phone with Bobby about every other day, going over those situations with him.
That's awesome.
You know, I called Bobby one day. I said, Bobby, in the playoffs, I said, I feel like I'm killing my relievers. I feel like I'm killing them. And Bobby said, Ned, listen. He said, they're professionals. Trust them. You built a relationship. And I think that's what Bobby did so well, too, was he built such a relationship with his pitchers that they were brutally honest with him. And Bobby never, gut up, let's go, none of that stuff. It was, how do you feel today? And they would be brutally honest with him. They would say, Bobby, I can go. Even if they've thrown 4 days in a row, I can go. Or, Bobby, I need a day. And Bobby would pat him on the shoulder, you got a day. And, he was always, they were always brutally honest with him. And Bobby said, look, you built that relationship with those pitchers. Trust what they say. If they say they can go, they can go. If they need a day, they need a day. And we would always, Dave Island would always go out and check with all the pitchers, and they were honest with us. So it made me feel a lot better in that respect. What was going on with our pitchers, it just made me feel much better because I had talked to Bobby. And we would go over certain situations during that time, and I mean, Bobby would call me. He would not miss our games, would not miss anything. He would call me. He would call me after a game. He'd be driving home listening to our game on the radio driving home. So he was always kept in touch. He always kept tabs on us. And if you ever had a question, you would sit and talk to Bobby. He was very approachable. And I did that every day. I would sit with Bobby every day. And we would drink coffee before the game. We would do our work. We would get ready for the game. We'd take our batting practice, and we would take infield, and you'd have that little 45-minute thing. I'd go change my clothes, and I'd get a cup of coffee, and Bobby and I would sit outside the dugout. In Atlanta, there was a room there with a computer, and where the weather was always on, and that's how I became such a outstanding weatherman by standing there listening to Eddie Mangan and Bobby talk about the weather, but we would sit there and talk, and a lot of times it was just idle chit chat. A lot of times there were people that would sit and join us. In Houston, the older George Bush loved Bobby, and he would come and sit underneath the dugout and just sit there with us for 45 minutes. It would be me, Bobby, and President Bush sitting there drinking coffee, just talking about baseball. Those are some of the funnest times I remember. But we were in Arizona one time, and Bobby and I were sitting there drinking a cup on the ground behind the dugout, just sitting on the ground, drinking coffee and talking. And all of a sudden, we were the visiting team. I told Bobby, it's awful quiet out there. I jumped up and I looked. They were holding the game up because the third base coach, who was me, wasn't in the box. I was under the ground. I was behind the dugout, sitting there just chatting with Bobby, having a good time. He saw me sprint out of there, and I laughed so hard walking over there because all the fans gave me like a standing ovation because I thought I probably got hung up in the bathroom, but I wasn't. I was just sitting back there talking to Bobby, but those were the good times.
Hey, Ned, before we let you go, and this has been awesome, and it's so fun to hear these stories, how has managing changed since Bobby was a manager?
Oh, it's changed about 180 degrees. I mean, there's so much information now. It was all run on feel and knowledge of your players and what they can do and what they couldn't do. It was on trust. It was on belief. It was on scouting. Bobby had a real good eye on talent. And, I didn't realize this until later, but, and I swear I didn't. I don't mean anything by this, but, I kind of developed that same eye. I could see guys like Salvador Perez and Moose and Hosmer, and, of course, some of these guys are easy, some of these guys aren't, but you could look at these guys and see their talent and their desire and their heart and know that they're going to be really, really good players. And Bobby could do that. Bobby grabbed me one time, and we were in spring training. He said, "Hey, let's go look at this kid over here in the minor league camp." He said, "Let's go check him out. I'm hearing a lot about this kid. I hear he's really good." So we went over there, and we watched like a 17-year-old Andrew Jones playing. And, Bobby looked at this kid and goes, "Oh, my." He said, "This kid's going to be absolutely special." It was fun to be able to do those type of things with him. But he was just amazing to the point where there was so much of it was in his blood. You talk about the ejections. One day he called me up and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I got my two boys they're playing baseball down here." And he goes, "Oh, that's around the corner." He goes, "I'm going to come watch with you." And I'm like, "Okay, come on." So we went down there, and we're standing behind the screen, and the umpire called a strike. Bobby started yelling at the umpire in a 12-year-old game. I told Bobby, "Stop it. You can't do that here." He goes, "That's not even close to a strike. What's that guy doing?" Bobby, "Quit it." He knocked it off. He just loved it. He loved the game. He loved being around people, and the old stories are true. To the day he retired, he would walk out into that dugout wearing spikes. You could hear him coming down the tunnel, the click-clack of the metal spikes, coming down the tunnel. But, he did his homework. He allowed the coaches to coach, but there were all the statistical data and the all the analytic stuff that has become so prevalent in the game today. None of that was involved back then. It was just all on gut feeling and, just managing baseball sense that you grew up with since you were a little kid on how to play the game right. I think one of the biggest things he taught me that players, that they crave discipline, players crave structure and organization. And he was non-bending on those things. And you saw a lot of that in Kansas City when Dayton came over, because Dayton was all in that system too. You never wore your hat backwards at that time. You never covered up the logo. Sunglasses had to be flipped down. They weren't the Oakleys or the fancy sunglasses that they wear today. You had to wear your uniform for batting practice. He'd always tell the guys, "Look, you've worked so hard to become major league players. We're going to wear a major league manager. You get to do something that very few people get to do. You're going to wear a major league uniform on that field for batting practice in the game." Couldn't wear tops. If you were a pitcher, you could wear the Braves jacket, but you couldn't go out there unless you were in full, practice uniform, batting practice uniform, or game uniform. And he was very rigid on that. He just expected us to go out and play the game extremely hard. Don't brag or boast about it. Just go out and play your hearts out. And when we win, we win. And when we lose, we lose. But we walk out of here the same every single day. But we don't, we don't make examples of ourselves. We don't, try to draw attention in anything that we do. We just go out and play hard.
Ned, Bobby Cox was a one-on-one. I believe you're a one-of-one, and we appreciate the time, the stories. I could do this for the rest of the show.
No doubt.
But we'll let you get on with the rest of your day. And, Ned, we appreciate it. Have a great time.
Thanks, Ned.
You guys, too. You guys have a great day.
You do the same. Take care. Tell Deb hi. Ned Yost with us here.
I'll do it.
I'm not hanging up.
He's not hanging up.
You got to hang up.
I'm not hanging up.
Ned.
Hey, guess what? I'll hang up.
Yeah.
Bye.
And we got a drop out of it.